Hey everyone, welcome along. Just before we get started, just a bit of housekeeping. If you have any questions at all, please wait until the end, or as it says in our little chat box on the right, you can feed them through in the chat and then I'll get to them at the end of the webinar. So let's kick off. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Nā mihi au ki te puke o whāriti. Ka manawa tū te awa. Ko Aotearoa te whenua o oku tipuna. Ko Ngāti Pākehā te iwi. No te papioia aho. Ko ke te ao action step toku mahi. Ko Mayhew toku whānau. Ko Stevie toko ingoa. No ruiwa, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. I've just given you my pepeha, a traditional way of introducing myself in Māori. It tells people who I am by sharing my connections with the places and people that are important to me, and is an interesting way of describing yourself, from the outside in. It speaks of my mountain, river, land, people, place of birth, workplace, and finally, who I am. In a talk about security, I think it's the perfect way to start. Describing from the outside in is one of the ways which we can talk about security. Security isn't just the encryption on your data, it's everything which leads up to that point. It's the people, the processes, the systems, the whole thing. It's important when you look at how to be secure to view it through multiple lenses, just like how my pepeha looks at who I am from many perspectives. Thank you all for coming today. We're going to spend some time discussing how I view security needs, some of the biggest risks you'll face in your business, helpful tools to mitigate some risk factors. We'll talk about how auditing is important, both internally and externally. And finally, how ActionStep can help you with your security boundaries. As a programmer in the past, and also in my heart, I thought it would be good to kick off with how I view security framing and some of the methods and methodologies that we use in a defensive programming mindset, and how they relate to wider security mindsets across your organization. The Open Web Application Security Project is a non-profit foundation that works to improve the security of software, and they've got a toolset called the Security by Design principles. Those principles are to minimize attack surface area, establish secure defaults, the principle of least privilege, the principle of defense in depth, fail securely, don't trust services, separation of duties, avoiding security by obscurity, keeping security simple, and fixing security issues correctly. I wanted to run through each of these to give some context around what that means and how that applies to the real world as well as programming. So every time that a programmer adds a feature to the application, they are increasing the risk of a security vulnerability. The principle of minimizing the attack surface area restricts the functions that users are allowed to access to reduce potential vulnerabilities. You should expect attacks against all aspects of your security implementation. This includes things like phishing emails, but can extend all the way up to physical penetration of your premises, malicious actors on your networks, and stolen hardware such as laptops and phones. Minimizing the attack surface allows to mitigate some of that risk. You should establish secure defaults. The application must be secure by default. This means that a new user must take steps to obtain higher privileges and remove additional security measures if they're allowed. Establishing safe defaults means that there should be strong security rules for how user registrations are handled, how often passwords must be updated, how complex they must be, and so on. By making sure that you fall back to a safe default, such as having a door which locks when it closes, you can ensure that your base security level is achievable. The principle of least privilege states that a user should have the minimum set of privileges required to perform a specific task. This can be applied to all aspects of a web application, including user rights and resource access. For example, a user who has signed up to a blog application as author should not have administrative privileges. This is something that comes as a no-brainer when we talk about things like access to financial data or your personal email inbox. But it's something which is important to consider across all parts of your business, and finding out where people can access and how high their access levels are is important to take note of. The principle of defense in depth states that multiple security controls that approach risks in different ways are the best option for securing an application. So instead of having one security control for user access, you would have multiple layers of validation, additional security auditing tools, and logging tools. Having many layers of control over your security infrastructure is a good thing. A really good example of this is a single sign-on, where you have to use multi-factor authentication at both the single sign-on provider and then at the application level, which is a good thing. There are many reasons why a web application would fail to process a transaction. Perhaps a database connection failed or the data input was wrong, but you should fail securely. The principle states that applications should fail in a secure way. It shouldn't give anyone additional privileges. It shouldn't show the user sensitive information like database queries or logs. A good analogy here is a magnetic lock on the outside door for people to get in and out of a building fails securely by letting them out. But if you have that on your data room, you don't want that magnetic lock to stop, and there should be another default, such as a physical lock there. Many web applications use third-party services for accessing additional functionality or obtaining additional data. This principle says that you shouldn't trust these services from a security perspective. That means the application should always check the validity of data that third-party services send, and not those that give high permission levels within the app. As a software as a service provider, you might think it's really odd for me to tell you not to trust services, but it isn't. You should be looking at all parts of your information networks and assessing where and how they access data. Using ActionStep as your system of record may be secure, but allowing a third party to access data within it via the API should be considered carefully, especially the boundaries of their application usage. Separation of duties can be used to prevent individuals from acting fraudulently. For example, a user of an e-commerce website should not be promoted to also be an administrator, as they would be able to alter orders. The reverse is also true. An administrator should not have the ability to do things that customers do, like order items from the front end of a website. This is especially important when you're looking at where and how things are stored within your business and who's got access and why. You should avoid security through obscurity. This principle states that security through obscurity should never be relied upon. If your application requires its administration URL to be hidden so that it can remain secure, then it's not secure. There should always be sufficient security controls in place to keep your application safe without hiding core functionality or source code. Just as in your business, you shouldn't rely on a complex set of rules and routines and filing systems to ensure that personal information isn't disclosed when printed out. Just get rid of the printer. Keep security simple. Developers should avoid the use of sophisticated architecture when developing security controls. Having things which are complex can increase the risk of errors. This is so important to developers that there are so many acronyms to describe this which are heavily used, like KISS, keep it simple stupid, YAGNI, you ain't gonna need it, DRY, don't repeat yourself, SRP, single responsibility principle, and on and on and on. All it boils down to is making sure that you are keeping things as easy as possible to make sure that you've got the least likelihood of failure. As before, remove the printer. If a security issue has been identified in an application, developers should determine the root cause of the problem. They should then repair it and test the repairs thoroughly. If the application uses design patterns, it is likely that the error might be present elsewhere. You should be careful to identify all affected systems. This is a super important principle and one which is often overlooked. If you find a problem, fix it properly and keep looking until you're sure it doesn't exist anymore. If you put a patch on it, the patch might fall away. So ensure that the underlying structures, processes, mechanisms change, and are well tested or wargamed to ensure that you've mitigated the issues. So those are the 10 principles which OWASP recommend and are key to the way which we develop secure software. But they have parallels in the way which you can keep your data and your business safe as well. There's a Maori proverb which goes, He aha te me nui o te ao, he tangata, he tangata, he tangata. What is the most important thing in the world? It is the people, it is the people, it is the people. In the case of security, the biggest risk factors that you have are always people. While a computer might be the tool used to implement a security breach, it'll be driven by a human want to do so. This can come in the form of a phishing attack, a USB drop, a stolen laptop with bad password management, like a post-it note with the password on it. There's also a couple of types of people which you should be aware of who have a big influence on the overall security of your business. Firstly, your people. Information has a life of its own. It travels by many different methods. It is collected on paper forms through websites and over the phone. It is processed by people and used in business transactions, such as transferring money, mailing bank statements. Information resides on desktop, laptops, servers, mobile phones. No single person is responsible for the security of the information. It is the responsibility of the whole to ensure the privacy and accuracy of all information. It is also the whole which remains the best way to get into your systems from the outside or from the inside as a bad actor. Ensuring that you're following security standards and have training on how your business responds to threats, operates usually, and accesses data on a day-to-day basis is important so that your teams can understand when something odd does occur, they know what to look for. They can pinpoint why it's weird and know who to talk to about it. So more generally, you are responsible for the security of your systems. That doesn't mean that you've implemented the firewall or know exactly how the DMZ works, but it does mean that you're aware of what operating normally looks like, what a potential breach could look like, and have had the training you need to understand what to do in each situation. You should also feel comfortable talking to anyone in the business about security concerns and working with the team to ensure that those concerns are met and alleviated. You should have policies and procedures to understand how to achieve these things. So there's a few helpful tools which can make your life a little bit easier and keep yourself more secure. Multi-factor authentication. You should be using multi-factor authentication on everything that has it enabled. You should expect to be challenged for authentication every time that you log into a system or every time that your current session expires. You should welcome the rigmarole of entering your username, password, and MFA tokens across 3 or 4 steps of a login. Each step keeps you more secure, prevents malicious actors from getting into systems through one bad password or MFA token. It can be a little bit annoying, but it's totally worth it. Password managers. You can get around that MFA rigmarole by using a password manager, which helps you to generate long, secure passwords and fill your MFA tokens automatically. At Action Step, we provide all members with access to a password manager, and we use it internally for sharing secrets as well. Having a strong password manager, and more importantly, the usage of it by your team, is a good thing. Again, you're placing your trust in one surface with one password to access it. It's important to make sure that you've got a strong passphrase, not a password for your password manager. A passphrase is generally a string of words which allows you to remember it easily, but makes it hard to be brute forced. You can use the Have I Been Pwned service to check if your passphrase is being used anywhere else. And it's always a good idea to do so to ensure that you can't be caught out by a rainbow table. And finally, utilizing single sign-on technology allows you to put your trust in a strongly encrypted managed environment such as Google or Microsoft. The benefits of utilizing SSO are that it allows you to keep your attack surface lower and put strong notification and detection methodologies into the provider of your choice for single sign-on. This means that you're more likely to catch intrusion attempts rather than trying to manage intrusions across a multitude of providers. This is a good thing to make sure that you can really make sure you've got a good security system on your single sign-on. Everybody loves an audit, and it's an important part of the security mechanism which you have in place. Without knowing the vulnerabilities or blind spots, you might not be in the best place to defend against them. Auditing also provides an opportunity for reflection to understand the pieces of the system which you have plans and processes in place for, and those which you don't. Assessing your risk can come in many forms, be it through internal or external means. Maintaining and reviewing a risk register is a core part of being aware of the concerns that you have across your business's risk profile, but also the security profile as well. Ensuring that you're keeping abreast of the changing landscape of your risk is something that should be scheduled and reviewed on an ongoing basis. Risk mitigation is an activity which you should be doing all the time. As we talked about earlier, the entire organization is responsible for security and also for its mitigation. Strategies and timeframes should be in place for the review of risks, and the implementations of findings should be a priority, which is shared by all staff. Finally, there's wargaming. The process of wargaming helps organizations understand the kinds of damage that can be caused by different types of attacks. Wargames facilitate better preparation for a crisis by providing greater insight into risk and offering an opportunity to practice collaborative procedures and rapid decision making. And it can lead to changes in organizational policy that speed up mitigation processes and reduce impact. From an operational perspective, running war games allows multiple teams that need to work together during attack and can be spread out in different locations with very different roles, responsibilities, and work processes to sharpen their collaborative capabilities and figure out exactly how to respond step by step. So how can Action Step help? Action Step is secure by design. It was built with security in mind, from keeping all of our customers' data separated from others, all the way through to ensuring that we encrypt strongly across our data stores, transport layers, in transit, and at rest. Your data is your business, and it's our business to make sure that it's protected. Using strong key-based encryption methods with regular rotation and auditing ensures that the security of data is trusted with Action Step and that we focus on it as a business. We provide multi-factor authentication so you can keep your business, and ensure that in the case of a password breach or phishing attempt, Action Step's access is secure by utilizing MFA. Choosing to sign in using a trusted provider like Microsoft or Google allows you to defend against intrusion on your terms and not on ours. Keeping your password strength, the bigger, the better. Action Step allows you to set your password policies to suit your needs and allows lockouts by IP, attempts, and the ability to ensure that people can only log in at certain times of the day. Thank you. Are there any questions? Philip has asked, is there any data, is our data in Action Step vulnerable if a user is careless with their password? Everything which a user can access in Action Step, if they lose their password or share it with somebody else, can be accessed by other people. That's a major risk factor, which is why we strongly encourage the use of multi-factor authentication within the system. It's the same as if they lost their keys to their house and somebody came in, essentially. We can't protect against that. But there are ways which you can ensure that that protection is used alongside single sign-on. Does that answer your question? Thanks, Philip. Awesome. If there's no more questions, I will let you all get on with your day. Thank you so much for coming to the webinar, and we will see you next time. Thank you very much.